Hello, welcome back to the Everything is Possible podcast. I'm your host, Laura Chacon Davis. I hope you're doing well today. The topic for the second episode is very important to our lives. Other than running a family business, it is the thing that most defines what our life looks like, and that is being parents. So I am going to share from my personal experience. I know this is a decision that looks different for everyone, but I really just want to share for me what it's been like to be on this journey of deciding to have kids and now in the process and being on the other side. I'll be honest, I had a lot of back and forth in my youth and early adulthood about whether I wanted to have kids. If you had asked me at different points in my life, I would have given different kind of answers. And I think there was a real turning point for me when I realized there's something odd about the way we frame this question and the way I had been framing it for myself, which is the question of, do you want to have children? And I think what strikes me about that now that I think about it is that we talk about having kids as though children are like a possession or just like an accessory to life versus asking whether you want to be a parent. And I think that really shifted things for me because I don't like that sort of having kids terminology. But when I asked myself, well, do I imagine being a parent? I realized the answer was yes. And it's for me so much more about the lifelong relationship that a parent has with other people in the world. You know, that relationship between a parent and child is um, it's unlike anything else, right? And I had enjoyed working with, younger people in my life. I had volunteered and taught, and I know I'd always enjoyed interacting with kids. Not like I was someone who loved kids, but being able to see that growth and be there for younger people, whether they're kids or adolescents, as they're going through life and learning and discovering things about the world and themselves. Sometimes it's hard, but I've always found it very rewarding to have that interaction and relationship with young people. And when I, in my late 20s, going on 30, started thinking about what I imagined for myself and my life, I could tell that I would be unsatisfied if I reached middle age and did not have that relationship with children, with ideally my own children. And I knew that it wasn't something I wanted like right away, certainly not necessarily in the traditional, settle down, get married, have kids, although maybe you could say that's what I've done. But that relationship of parenting a person, of being with a young person as they grow and change and go through their phases of life, I decided, I realized that was something I really did want for myself. And for me, I think that was really how I came around to the decision that, you know what, this is obviously a huge commitment. It shapes so much of what your life looks like. At the same time, I don't think it has to be as limiting as it's often painted to be. I know a lot of folks um, are concerned about, loss of independence and freedom with having kids. And they're, being a parent changes things, but I don't think it has to be as constrictive as maybe our culture has made it out to be. Certainly, we're trying to do things differently, as always. And, this decision, like I said, this has been my journey. I think there's no easy or straightforward way to come about the decision of parenting. I really respect that everyone has their own process. Um, there are people who know right away that they don't want to be parents, that they don't want to have kids, and that's great. If you are sure about that, then you have every right to make that decision. And I do think it is bizarre that our culture still continues to assume that like people should want to be parents. I think people who don't want to be parents shouldn't be parents. Seems very clear to me. So if it's clear to you, that's great. You have every right to make that decision. If it's not clear and you're still not sure and deciding, that's also okay. It is different for everyone. And one of the things that I kind of anticipated, and it is very true about parenting, is that there's a lot you can't plan. You can't know what comes next. And I think I talked about in the pilot how I used to be a person who was very like plan oriented, thinking about the future. And one of the things I had to accept in becoming a parent is that we can make plans, sure, but anything can happen. I think being a parent, having kids, it introduces one of the biggest uncertainty factors you can ever introduce. And so, um, you know, I have had to learn to deal with that and be okay with that. One of the things that I certainly had not planned for, tried to set aside all thoughts and expectations, was the reality of taking a career break, as it were. I knew that when our first came, when I had Steven, that I was going to take some time off working. And it wasn't just take some time off working for me. It was was ending a contract and I wasn't planning to return. And there really was no clear plan or expectation about what that would look like. No real timeline. It was just very much in the experience of having a baby and uh, not knowing what was going to come next, which is sort of freeing. It can also maybe be sort of alarming. And I also recognize too that there is a choice in that, that it's a privilege that we were able to make that choice, that we had the financial stability at that time for me to not know what was going to come next work wise. Now that here we are, we have clearly decided to run a business and I am working, doing that again. But that's one of those things where, immediately during and after, a baby coming into your life, what your financial or work situation is going to be can be planned for. And sometimes those plans work out and sometimes they don't. So that's just one example of how, becoming a parent is sort of accepting this grand adventure that you can only somewhat plan for. And I am just on for the ride at this point. Um, I have never yet regretted the decision to have kids. And I think it's valid that some people do. I'm feeling like, we're riding the waves. We have the ups and downs and we're just going for it. It looks different every day, every week, and it will continue to change. I will say that those first few weeks and months postpartum are still kind of a blur. I think that's pretty normal. And I do think later on, I'm going to do a full episode on the postpartum experience once I've gone through it a second time. What I can say is that, on this side of being a parent, again, it's that constant change that you just have to be willing to accept, that things change so quickly as little ones are developing, what they can and can't do, what you have to prepare for, how you live your life. It's good to set patterns and structure and routine when you can, and then be prepared to change those routines and structures, right? And that change, it's it's been, I think, good for me to experience that, massive shift in my own flexibility. Parenting is also a two-way street, and that's something that I also sort of anticipated, is that as this little person is growing and changing and learning about the world, I also am continuing to grow and change and learn more things about the world, have new experiences as a parent. I feel like I have expanded my own views and perspective on the world so much after experiencing pregnancy and becoming a parent. I'm just seeing and experiencing new things that I have um, never been privy to before. And it's been, again, I think really good for me to have those new experiences of seeing things differently and questioning and noticing things of what it's like to be a parent in this day and age. And I hope that I will continue to change just as a person, as our children grow over the years, as they go through childhood and adolescence and their young adulthood in the future. Um, we can't know what the world will be like, and I can't know who I will be in the years to come. And I think being able to accept that, both that uncertainty and the willingness to continue changing as a person, has been good for me. I hope to continue to learn as my children learn and experience the world. There's also this theme of, how do I stay sort of true to myself and feel like a full, complete person while also being a full-time caregiver to young children. And I know that's a huge challenge for a lot of parents, especially mothers who are full-time caregivers. I do think in a lot of ways there are so many just norms and expectations, those like subconscious like shoulds and shouldn'ts that enter my head that shape a lot of my experience of, well, um why is this difficult, or why am I struggling with this? And along with the theme of this podcast, everything is possible, I really want to validate that however you're experiencing motherhood or parenthood, it doesn't have to be this way, right? with with everything that we're going through in evolving society, I think we can look forward to new ways of parenting and finding out together how to be a part of this journey and how to make it better for ourselves and our children and families moving forward. So I hope you have resonated some with what I've shared. Please let us know if any of this is speaking to you. We'd love to see your thoughts in a comment. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Until then, please remember that everything is possible.